Hello everyone, welcome to this session on web developer interview questions. Whether you are a seasoned developer preparing for your next job opportunity or someone aspiring to enter in the field of web development, knowing what to expect in web developer interview is crucial. In today's video, we will be covering a variety of questions that are commonly asked during the web developer interview. From fundamental concepts to problem-solving scenarios, we have got you covered. Stay tuned to gain insights into the type of questions that might come your way. But before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and for more content like this, hit the bell icon so you can never miss an update. Also, visit the Edureka website for web developer certification training course, the link to which is in the description box below. Now, let's jump into the beginner level web developer interview questions. And the first question is, what are the key skills needed for a great web developer? To be a skilled web developer, you need to have the following skills: proficiency in HTML, CSS and JavaScript, and then the knowledge of responsive designs and framework, example Bootstrap. Also, understanding of version control systems like Git, and the ability to work with front-end libraries or framework, example React or Angular, along with the back-end development skills, example Node.js and Express.js, data management skills such as SQL or NoSQL. Now, moving on to the next question, what advantages does HTTP 2.0 offer in comparison to HTTP 1.1? Firstly, we have multiplexing, handles multiple requests on a single connection, improving efficiency. Next, header compression, reduces overhead and enhances speed. Third, we have server push, allows server to send multiple responses without waiting for requests, improving page load times. Fourth, we have binary protocol, enhances parsing efficiency and reduces errors. Fifth, we have stream prioritization, enables request prioritization, improving user experience. Moving on to the third question. In JavaScript, how would you go about selecting every element that has a specific class? In JavaScript, to select all elements with a specific class, you can use document.querySelectAll along with the class selector. For example, to select all elements with the class example class, constant element equal to document.querySelectAll in the bracket .example class. This returns a node list containing all elements with a specified class, allowing you to manipulate or perform actions on these elements. Moving on to the fourth question, what makes ID and class in HTML CSS differ from one another? The key differences between ID and class in HTML CSS are: an ID is a unique identifier assigned to a specific HTML element, ensuring its singular presence within a document. In contrast, a class serves as a categorization tool, allowing multiple HTML elements to share the same class designation. Each ID can be used only once per HTML document, preventing duplication and ensuring a distinct identifier for each element. Classes, on the other hand, are designed to be reusable and can be applied to multiple elements throughout a single HTML document. IDs are commonly used for targeted styling or manipulating of individual elements using CSS or JavaScript. Classes, being more versatile, enable the application of shared styles or behaviors to multiple elements within the same class designation. The HTML syntax for applying an ID is through the ID equal to unique ID attribute. To apply a class, the HTML attribute used in class equal to class name. In CSS, an ID is accessed using #uniqueID. Conversely, in CSS, a class is accessed using .classNameSelector. Moving on to the fifth question, why is a namespace used in web development? Namespaces are used to avoid naming conflicts between various parts of code or libraries. They ensure that variables, functions, or elements with similar names don't conflict or interfere with one another. Moving on to the sixth question, describe Webpack. The most widely used module bundler in modern web development is known as Webpack. It gathers various resources including images, CSS files and JavaScript files and builds a dependency graph out of them so that they can be used together in the web application. Moving on to the seventh question, describe the CSS box model. The CSS box model is a fundamental concept that defines the structure and layout of elements on a web page. It comprises of 4 components such as: first, we have content. The element's actual content, including any text, photos, or other media, is referred to as content. The padding, border, and margin encloses it. Second, we have padding, the distance from element's border to its content. In CSS, padding is used to specify internal space that an element can have. Third, we have border. It surrounds the content area and padding. Border styles, colors, and widths are all customizable with CSS border properties. Fourth, we have margin, the area outside the border that separates this element from its surrounding. Now, let's move to the 8th question. Explain about significance of CORS, Cross-Origin Resource Sharing. A security feature called Cross-Origin Resource Sharing is applied by web browsers to control access to resources on a web page from various origins, also called as domains. The importance of CORS is found in its ability to allow or deny cross-origin requests, which are requests for resources such as scripts, data, or fonts from a domain other than one currently hosting the web page. Moving on to the 9th question. Explain HTML5 web storage. HTML5 web storage allows browsers to store data locally within a user's browser in a key value pair. It has 2 types, session storage and local storage. This feature is useful for caching, storing user preferences, and enabling offline capabilities. However, it has size limit and isn't suitable for sensitive data due to its client-side nature. Moving on to the 10th question. What is selector used in CSS? A selector in CSS is a pattern or expression that targets specific HTML elements to apply styling rules. It defines which element in an HTML document the CSS rules should be applied to. To put it shortly, selectors plays a crucial role in applying styles to elements, allowing developers to precisely target and style HTML elements according to the various criteria or conditions. Now, moving on to the 11th question, explain the difference between inline and block elements in CSS. Block elements start to a new line and stretch to use all the available horizontal space, and they stack on the top of each other vertically and can contain both block and inline elements, creating separate blocks on a web page. Example include paragraphs, headings, and divisions. Inline elements, however, don't start on a new line. They only take up as much width as necessary and flow within the content, allowing other elements to sit beside them on the same line. They cannot contain block level elements and are often used for small parts of content within a line, like emphasizing text, hyperlink, or spans. Moving on to the 12th question, explain the difference between the HTML5 span and div tags. Span is an inline element mainly used for styling small content within a line, while div is a block level element used for creating larger divisions in a document, organizing content into separate blocks for containers. Span does not create new lines and it's suitable for inline style elements, whereas div create new lines by default and is employed for structuring larger sections of content. Now, moving on to the 13th question, what is HTML canvas purpose? The HTML canvas element is used to create graphics, animations, and interactive visualizations directly within a web page using JavaScript. Its main purpose is to provide a drawing surface on which developers can dynamically generate and manipulate graphics, shapes, images, animations, and more. Moving on to the 14th question, explain DOM, Document Object Model. A programming interface of web document is called Document Object Model, or DOM. It represents HTML and XML documents shared as a tree-like model, with each node representing an element, attribute, or text segments of the document. Now, as we move to advanced web developer interview questions, get ready for deeper technical exploration, covering both front-end and back-end expertise. Now, the first question is, state difference between SVG, Scalable Vector Graphics, and Canvas. SVG uses XML-based tags to define shapes and is scalable without quality loss. Elements are the part of the DOM, allowing easy manipulation, styling, and animation using CSS or JavaScript. Retains objects as individual elements, enabling dynamic modification and interaction. Canvas provides a drawing context through JavaScript for immediate mode bitmap graphics. Render graphics directly onto the canvas without retaining objects, making post-rendering manipulation difficult. Not inherently scalable without loss of quality due to its pixel-based nature. Moving on to the second question, define the Worldwide Consortium, W3C. The World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, is an international community that creates guidelines and standards to guarantee the World Wide Web's continual growth and accessibility. The web's creator, Tim Berners-Lee, started it in 1994 by creating standards and guidelines that make the web more inclusive, accessible, and interoperable for all users. W3C plays a crucial role in influencing the direction of the web. Moving on to the third question, why are pseudo classes used in CSS? In CSS, pseudo classes are used to specify the unique states of elements that are not selectable and standard selectors. Without the need for extra classes or JavaScript, they enable styling elements based on users' interaction, position within the document, or specific conditions. The syntax is selector pseudo class in the bracket CSS properties. Now, moving on to the fourth question, describe the variations between NoSQL and SQL databases. SQL databases are relational and uses a structured schema that defines the tables, their columns, and relationship between tables, whereas NoSQL databases are non-relational, allowing flexible schemas and handling unstructured or semi-structured data. SQL databases follows the ACID properties, which stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability, ensuring strong consistency and reliability. Coming to NoSQL, it emphasizes flexibility and can follow BASE, basically available soft state eventually consistent properties, prioritizing availability and partition tolerance over strong consistency. SQL databases uses SQL, structured query language, for defining and manipulating data. SQL is standardized and widely used for querying. Coming to NoSQL databases, it does not exclusively rely on SQL and might have its own query language or APIs. Some NoSQL databases support SQL-like querying, but it's not universal. In SQL databases, scaling vertically can be limited due to hardware constraint. Here, scaling vertically means adding more power to a single server, whereas in the case of NoSQL databases, it is generally more scalable horizontally due to their distributed nature, allowing them to handle large volume data and traffic. Here, scalable horizontally means adding more servers. Moving on to the fifth question, what is pair programming? Two programmers collaborate at a single workstation using the agile software development technique known as pair programming. The driver who writes the code and the observer or navigator is the person who reviews each line of the code as it is typed, offering quick feedback, making suggestions for enhancement, and talking about design choices. Moving on to the sixth question, how do CSS selectors work? List a few. CSS selectors are patterns used to select and style HTML elements based on the attributes, types, positions, and more. Here are a few common CSS selectors. Element selector targets elements based on their type. Class selector selects elements with a specific class attribute. ID selector targets a specific element with unique ID attribute. Attribute selector target elements based on their attribute values. Pseudo classes select elements based on their state or position. Moving on to the seventh question, describe what a JavaScript scope is and list its various forms. Scope in JavaScript describes how variables and functions are visible and accessible inside the code. It establishes the locations at which these variables and functions can be used, as well as how they interact with other code segments. There are mainly three types of scope in JavaScript: global scope, function scope, and block scope. Coming to global scope, global variables are those that are declared outside of any block or function. They can be accessed from any place in the code, even from functions. If you check this piece of code, you can check this piece of code. The global variable has been declared outside the function, but it is accessible within the function as well as it is accessible from outside the function. Moving on to the function scope, a function's declared variables are covered by its scope. They are not visible outside of that function and can be only accessed within it. If you check this piece of code, the local variable has been declared inside my function and it is accessible only from inside the function. If you try to access it from outside the function, it will show you an error. Coming to the block scope, variables declared with keyword const and let have block scope. This indicates that they are restricted to the block, such as if statement or loops, in which they are defined typically inside curly braces. You can check this particular piece of code where you can see that the block variable is declared inside the if block. You can access the block variable from inside the block, but if you try to access this block variable from outside the block, you can see an error over here. Moving on to our 8th question, state the difference between local storage and cookies. Cookies have a limited storage capacity, about 4 KB per cookie, and are sent with every HTTP request, making them accessible from both the server and the client side. They can have an expiration date and are commonly used for session management and user authentication, and are vulnerable to cross-site scripting attacks. Local storage, on the other hand, has a larger capacity, approximately 5 MB per domain, and is only accessible through the client. It remains active until explicitly cleared, making it appropriate for larger dataset, application state, and user preferences. While local storage is more secure than cookies, it is still vulnerable to XSS attacks, and if not handled properly, it cannot be accessed by the server unless explicitly sent. Moving on to our 9th question, how to handle type conversion in JavaScript. JavaScript's handling of type conversion is essential for data manipulation and ensuring that various data types operate properly. JavaScript offers a number of methods for handling type conversion. The first one is implicit type conversion. It happens automatically when different types are used together in the operation. In this example, the x is declared as a number and y equal to 60 has been declared as a string. If we put a sum equal to x plus y, the JavaScript converts the x to a string and performs string concatenation. The console.log sum will give you an output of 5060 as a string. Coming to explicit type conversion, we have string conversion. In string conversions, we use string function or toString function to convert to strings. In example, here let n equal to 123 is been declared as a number. String n function converts the integer n into a string n. If we use console.log type of string, then as an output we get a string. In the second one, let boolean value equal to true. Now boolean value to string will convert this true value into string value. Next, we have number conversion using number function, parse int function or parse float function for numbers. In this example, string n equal to 456. Here 456 is declared as a string. Let nval equal to number of string n converts the string n into a number. If we use console.log type of n value, then the output will be a number. Similarly, parse int converts 10.5, a string value, into an integer value, and parse float converts string 10.5 into a float value 10.5. Moving on to boolean conversion, we use boolean function to convert to booleans. Let value equal to 0. Now boolean value will convert the type of value into a boolean value. The console.log bool value will give you an output as false. Now if we had a value equal to 1, then console.log bool value would have returned you a true value. Coming to unary operators, unary plus, unary minus, and logical NOT can perform implicit type conversion in specific contexts. You can see the code. Let string number equal to 123. Here 123 is a string. Let converted num equal to plus str number. Here the unary plus for converting to number. Console.log type of converted num would have given you an output number. Moving on to our 10th question, how can different style sheets be integrated into a website the best way? The best way to integrate different style sheets into a website is by using external style sheets .css files linked in the HTML head section. This ensures organized, modular, and maintainable code along with responsiveness achieved through media queries and support for legacy browsers using conditional comments when necessary. Moving on to our 11th question, what are CSS transitions? What are their properties? With CSS transitions, elements can smoothly switch between styles in a specific duration of time. By offering smooth animation or changes to attributes like color, size, position, or opacity, they improve the user experience. Properties of CSS transition. Transition property specifies the CSS property to which the transition will be applied. Example, color with opacity. Transition duration defines the duration of the transition effect in seconds or milliseconds. Transition timing function determines the pace of the transition, controlling the acceleration or deceleration. Transition delay is an optional property that sets a delay before the transition starts. Moving on to the 12th question, why are closures used in JavaScript? JavaScript closures are useful because even after the outer function has completed running, they let the functions inside keep access to variables from their containing scope. They close over the variables, establishing a scope chain that allows inner function to access the parameter and variables of outer function. You can see the closures are used in this example to nest one function, inner function, inside another function, outer function. Even after the outer function has finished executing, the inner function continues to have access to its variable. This allows for a creation of a closure that remembers the value of x. When the closure is later called with the argument y, it has access to both x and y, allowing the output of the combination x plus y to be logged. Closures are useful for encapsulating and preserving variable state. Now, moving on to the 13th question, explain long pooling. In web development, long pooling is a method used to establish real-time communication between a server and a client, usually a web browser. With this technique, real-time updates can be created without the constant pooling that characterizes conventional methods, as the server can send updates to the client as soon as the new data becomes available. Moving on to our 14th question, what are the new form elements introduced in HTML5? In order to improve user input handling and user interaction, HTML5 introduced a number of new form elements. Some of these new form elements are input types. Input type email for email addresses, input type URL for web addresses, input type number for numeric input, input type date for date input, input type time for time input, input type search for search queries. Data list provides a predefined list of options for input elements. Output displays the result of calculations or user actions. Progress and meter. Progress represents task completion progress. Meter displays measurements within a range. Text area attributes, we have max length that limits the number of characters in a text area and wrap that refines a wrapping behavior in a text area. Moving on to the 15th question, why is grouping used in CSS3? Grouping in CSS3 is used to streamline and simplify the styling process by applying the same set of styles to multiple selectors at once. It allows you to define styles or different elements that share common styling attributes without repeating the same declaration for each individual selector. Over here, you can see this example in the following code. With this, we have come to the end of this session. I hope you have enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and keep learning.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!